there are a few different metaphors that I bandy about to speak to this, and one of them is quite new. In fact, I just shared it in that email, but it's not something that I've really shared much before. One way to think about this is through the lens of the fantasy novels like the J.R.R. Tolkien and those classic fantasy novels, which are so allegorical to life. For example, when you think about, they often involve a journey towards a destination, a big dream. Whether that big dream was forced on them, we need to get rid of this damn ring, or a big dream that was a little bit more positive. But at any rate, they're trying to get, someone's trying to get somewhere, and realizes that the only way they're going to get there is with the merry band of travelers. And sometimes there's these people with different strengths. One's good at magic, one muscly and brawn, the other one is good at whatever. So they have these different strengths, and often in the beginning, these people, they're not all just people, these characters, personalities, are often find each other fairly irritating. They grate on each other and often, gallop away in a huff. But at some point, they find themselves up against a big giant rock wall, and they've got to move it to get, along the path to the next place. There's no other way around, and they're stuck, and then a couple of days later, the character that they galloped off from ambles up, and it turns out this character, if irritating in the beginning, or maybe even still, has the unique strength to be able to move this rock and together. So the real win in the end, or the message in the end, is that we can't do this alone. And one way to interpret that is we need other people. That's true, and that's a great way to interpret it. But another deeper and very practical way to think about this is we need all of the parts of ourselves, like the merry band of travelers inside us, even the parts that we found irritating. We need to somehow fall in love with those parts again, or at least bring them to the fore, so that, to continue with this metaphor, at the end of the day, we have the merry band of travelers. Like they came in from the dark and the gloom deep inside us, and now they're all sitting around the fire pit together. As I said in the email, any fantasy novel worth its salt, they'd be all smoking long, thoughtful pipes, right? But at any rate, that's the win, and which is overtly stated in those fantasy novels, especially at the end of the book, after the climax of the book, is that the win was the merry band of travelers. They got what they needed done, and that was a big deal, and they're very happy with it and proud of it, and it was because of that brought them together. But the biggest win of all is that they are whole as a group. And then metaphorically, I think that's possible for how we can feel inside. So facing into the wind of a big dream, it's not always windy, it's not always in our face. There are days that are beautiful and the wind is at your back. But there are inevitably times that with a true big dream that we're just not going to get from one milestone through to the next. We will be completely stopped in our tracks by something like lack of confidence or lack of support. There's going to be some absence that stops us. And the only way we're going to get through is when we have the chance or the opportunity, the privilege to allow some part of us deep inside to come up and join the fireside and be with us. If we're approaching the world with our brain, we may not be able to get through this problem with our brain. We may need our heart. And we may need something else. So anyway, that was a fun little metaphor that I was playing with today, and I wanted to share that with you. And also just to encourage you, if this is speaking to you, if you're a person that feels like you have a calling or there's a big dream that you're working towards, and you feel that when you run into those inevitable things, especially loss of confidence, that it's a bad thing, that you've stumbled, that you are not up to the task or something. And I'm thinking it's almost the opposite. This is precisely the point that when stopped there and dealt with in some kind of a way that works, is where more of you comes online, and more of you is the win. And then you can proceed to the next thing. So it's not necessarily a problem that you're at this place. This might be the best place to be at, and a place where, let's say, a best friend from inside you, your heart maybe, can catch up with you and then you're best friends for the rest of your life. You spend your lives together because of this problem. And so it's an interesting way to look at challenges too. All right, I'll stop waffling and let you get back to your day. I had a few things that I wanted to share there. Take care.